What if I told you that the strongest person in any room isn't the loudest or the boldest, but the one who seems least fazed by chaos? The one who listens more than they speak, who observes instead of reacts. You've probably walked past them 100 times without knowing what burns beneath their silence. But once you understand what ancient Stoic philosophers uncovered about the nature of power, everything changes. You see, the world misunderstands calmness. We assume that stillness means indifference, that a composed face means someone doesn't care. But the Stoics believed the exact opposite. According to them, emotional stillness is not the absence of feeling, it's the mastery of it. And here's the paradox. The Stoic, the truly unshakable one, isn't numb. They feel everything. They just refuse to be ruled by it. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn will transform the way you understand strength, resilience, and the hidden fire of self-mastery. The Stoics believe that true power doesn't come from control over others, but from control over the self. Epictetus, a slave-turned-philosopher, said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." That sounds noble, but it's not just a quote. It's a warning, because self-mastery, real self-mastery, is one of the most brutal roads a human being can walk. Imagine being insulted and not responding. Imagine losing something you love and not collapsing. Imagine standing in the center of chaos and feeling still, not because you're cold, but because you've trained your soul to bend without breaking. That's what Stoicism is, not detachment, but discipline. A fire that's been tamed so well, it no longer needs to rage. But here's where it gets deeper. The Stoics introduced a concept called apatheia. Not apathy, but inner freedom. The ability to remain undisturbed by what you cannot control. Now think about that. In a world addicted to outrage, to validation, to emotional reactions, someone who lives by apatheia seems almost alien. But this calm is not weakness. It is strength in its most disciplined form. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor who ruled an empire while writing meditations in the dead of night, said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The world around him was filled with war, betrayal, and political chaos. But inside, he created silence, not to escape the world, but to meet it on his terms. This is where most people misunderstand Stoicism. They think it's about suppressing emotions. It's not. It's about transforming them. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." What he meant is that pain, fear, and loss, they don't destroy us. Our resistance to them does. And that's the turning point in every Stoic's journey, when they stop fighting the world and start preparing for it. It's not that Stoics feel less. It's that they've trained themselves to feel wisely. And that changes everything. But let me ask you something. What happens when you take a deeply emotional, sensitive person and give them Stoic tools? What happens when someone who once overreacted learns to observe, reflect, and respond with precision? You get a quiet storm. You get someone who's walked through fire and doesn't brag about the burns. You get what the Stoics called a sage in training, someone who isn't perfect, but who is radically committed to living by reason, not impulse. And this is where modern society gets confused. It thinks emotional restraint is cold. But the Stoics knew it's compassion with boundaries, love without dependency, peace that doesn't need permission. The Stoic is not unreachable. They are reliable. They're the one who doesn't gossip when everyone else does. The one who doesn't clap back when insulted. The one who forgives, but doesn't forget the lesson. They walk away, not because they're weak, but because they know staying would cost them their inner freedom. And for a Stoic, that is the one thing that cannot be sold. Epictetus said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things." That's not just philosophy. That's instruction. That means if you can change how you interpret the world, you can change your entire experience of it. The Stoic trains their mind like a warrior trains their sword. Not for show, but for necessity. But here's the part that no one expects. The Stoic transformation doesn't begin with power. It begins with pain. No one turns to Stoicism because life is easy. They turn to it because they're tired of being at the mercy of their emotions. because they're exhausted from needing people who can't love them back, because they've seen what it means to be ruled by fear, and they've had enough. So they begin to work. They journal. They reflect. They observe themselves in every situation. They begin to break the cycle of reactivity. And slowly, day by day, they become less shaken. Not because they're hard, but because they found something unbreakable inside themselves. And this is where the Stoic paradox comes to life. The most powerful people don't look powerful. They look calm. They look quiet. They look like they're simply listening. But inside, they're measuring every word, every move, every motive. Not out of suspicion, but from clarity. They're no longer ruled by the need to be liked, to be heard, to be validated. They've replaced the desire for control with a commitment to discipline. They don't need to dominate because they've already conquered the hardest person in their life, themselves. Now let's flip the lens. What happens when someone who used to explode stops reacting? What happens when someone who once spiraled into anxiety begins to breathe instead? The world doesn't know what to do with them because the Stoic no longer plays the game. They don't take the bait. They don't argue with fools. They don't chase love that withholds. They no longer prove their worth because they've finally seen it. And this is the moment where everything changes. The former people pleaser becomes unshakable. The once frantic lover becomes centered. The self-doubting soul becomes still. Not because the world changed, but because they did. The Stoics called this moment ataraxia, a state of unshakable tranquility. It doesn't mean life is perfect. It means your peace is no longer negotiable. You can't manipulate someone who doesn't crave approval. You can't bait someone who doesn't fear silence. You can't control someone who has already learned to rule themselves. This is the Stoic paradox. The calmest person in the room is not empty. They are full of fire they've mastered, full of thoughts they've refined, full of self-respect that can't be bargained away. They are not passive. They are poised. They are not cold. They are composed. They are not weak. They are willingly restrained. So the next time you meet someone who doesn't flinch under pressure, who doesn't rush to defend themselves, who doesn't spill their emotions to be understood, don't assume they're hiding something. They're not hiding. They've simply chosen what to reveal. They're living proof that philosophy isn't just something you read. It's something you become. And in a world that reacts without thinking, the Stoic thinks before everything. That's not apathy. That's mastery. If this message stirred something in you, subscribe to The Still Mind and share this video with someone who needs to remember. The strongest flame doesn't flicker. It burns quietly with purpose.